In this chapter, you will be introduced to budgeting and how budgeting serves as a governance control for a nonprofit organization. Budgeting is an essential element in the financial planning and control and evaluation of effectiveness for a nonprofit organization. The budgeting process is generally an annual exercise that is performed, as the budget is the primary mechanism as to how a nonprofit organization will utilize its spending to effectuate the mission that it was set up to fulfill. The start of each budgeting process is begun by management that develops a budget, and then it culminates into a budget that is formally adopted by the board of directors or trustees, and once adopted, serves as the primary tool for how the nonprofit will operate in the next fiscal year. In this chapter, the text will introduce you to the key purposes, certain key purposes of budgets, the need for one or more types of budgets, the various ways of classifying expenditures and revenues in a budget, the benefits of a performance budget, the key phases in the budgeting cycle, the basis on which budgets may be prepared, any limitations of a budget to actual comparison when performing variance analysis, how budgeting in nonprofit organizations may differ from, governmental budgeting processes, how budgets enhance control, how encumbrance systems may help in the budgeting process, as well as helping a nonprofit organization keep within its approved budget. As always, please refer to the textbook and the comprehensive PowerPoint that's included with this week's material for further information. This, this slide provides some of the key purposes on why a nonprofit will adopt a budget for each fiscal year. The first purpose is planning. As with any organization, whether you're a profit or a nonprofit, management must put together a plan to get from point A to point B. In a for-profit setting, it may be that management is planning how to operate in the next fiscal year as far as what their level of sales they're trying to achieve and ultimately a projected level of profitability and how the organization will allocate its resources and expenses to achieve that revenue goal and ultimate profitability goal. For a nonprofit, it's a matter of how how the nonprofit will utilize and spend its resources in achieving and fulfilling the stated purpose of the organization. And then throughout the year, budgets perform a controlling and administration check on the ongoing operations of the nonprofit. It helps to identify areas where maybe the nonprofit is getting close to the approved amount of level of spending or trying to identify any areas of concern before and to allow management to try to react in time to address that building concern. And then finally, at the end of each operating cycle, reporting and evaluating how well the organization did to the stated plan. Reporting is provided both internally and externally to help evaluate how the organization did. For external reporting, as mentioned in previous chapters, it provides a reporting on how to the donors on how the organization utilized and spent its contributions that were received from the donors. And from an internal perspective, it identifies areas where maybe costs or certain activities were outside of the expectations of management. It gives an opportunity for management to try to make changes so that in the next fiscal year that they can operate closer to budget or in a more efficient manner. This slide presents the typical budgeting cycle for a nonprofit. Although the terminology used in this slide is more appropriate to a governmental setting, the basic principles involved in the slide still apply to a nonprofit setting. So at the very top, you have at the beginning of each budgeting cycle is preparation of a budget. And going clockwise, once the budget is prepared by management, it is then presented to and approved by the board of directors or the board of trustees. And then once adopted and approved, it's then up to the management team and the nonprofit to execute on that budget. And then at the end of each operating cycle, reporting and auditing is performed to determine how well the nonprofit kept within the approved budget and to identify any areas of concern after all of the actual activities were conducted during the year.